Okay.
Échale. Intento.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. As always, thank you so much for being here. This is very weird to do this in front of human beings, especially my father, but this is my father!
Hello there.
This is Hector, depending...
And my dad is Hector, and my son is Hector.
Yeah, depending on what language you speak, you can call him either one. Anyway, today we're going to give you some book recommendations, but specifically audiobooks, because my father is an avid audiobook listener. How many years has it been now?
11.
Really?
11 years.
Jeez. I never really listened to audiobooks. I think I started listening to audiobooks a year ago, maybe. I've always read the physical copies, but since I've been reading way more, there's no way to keep up with all the books that I'm reading, so audiobooks help me stay on top of them all. My dad is in a vehicle for many hours of the day to get to and from work.
Yeah,
so
that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, so...
It's not probably the reason why I had to listen to audiobooks as opposed to reading books, because it's just, you have 1 hour commute, so that's the best way to kill your time, and reading books is awesome. Actually, when I finish my job, I look forward to my commute. That's my time. I'm just gonna get on my book, whatever story I'm getting into, and I actually enjoy the commute, as crazy as that sounds.
So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today. I don't know what books my father picked, and he doesn't know what books I picked. So let's do it. Do you want to do the first one, or should I?
Okay, I'll try it and you tell me.
Okay.
So the first book I picked is a very unusual book. This is almost like a textbook. This is a book about history. And what I really found interesting about this book, first is the narrator, I believe is the actual author. The voice is so warm, almost like a grandpa type voice that you just want to sit on a couch and have a tea and listen to this story. So what is really fascinating about this book is that the way he teaches you about history is not like the typical boring textbook. No, this one is just really sitting on a nice porch with a cup of tea and just listening to stories from the past. And you just don't want to stop. You just want to keep listening to the stories. At the end of this book, I was just thinking, wow, if we can only learn history this way as opposed to chapter number 1, whatever. No, this was amazing. So, and the voice, I said again, is just so warm and friendly that just I really enjoyed that one.
Wonderful. Okay, that's good. Good job, Dad. Also, another thing, it's very weird to speak to my father in English.
We never do.
We only speak to each other in Spanish, so if suddenly I start saying something in Spanish, or if he says something in Spanish, I'll put subtitles. But
force of habit.
Yeah, that's just how we communicate. Anyway, my first pick is Misery by Stephen King, okay?
Ooh.
Yeah, so the reason why I'm sharing this one, the book itself is great. I listened to it while I was reading the physical copy, but the audiobook is so good, Dad. Like, it genuinely, it's a woman that reads it, and she does Annie Wilkes' voice. She is an actress.
Oh,
like
there's a performance in it.
It is a full performance. When she gets angry, you can almost feel like the spit hitting your face.
No,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so good. It's so good. She would say things and it would give me chills. It's so well done. I loved that narration. I think it's done stupendously well. It's so brilliant. And it's almost like she adapts her voice depending on what is being discussed.
She's adding color, right?
Yeah.
And texture to the whole thing.
You can,
yes.
It's so vivid in your mind when you're listening to it, and or whichever way you're doing it, you can just, it's like a movie playing in your head without actually watching the movie. It's so good. I would highly, especially if you've never read a Stephen King, which I hadn't until I read Misery, I think it's the perfect introduction to it because it's not very long.
It's not very long.
No,
yeah.
it's, so you don't have to dedicate like so many hours to reading your first Stephen King, so you can get through it quite quickly, and it's phenomenal. So that's my first one.
Right. So one of the things you have with audiobooks is that you taking your chances in one way. If the narrator is perfect and is in time with the story and it's not too much and it's not too little, then you have a plus. But if the narrator is off the story, meaning when you have to express sadness, you don't hear that in the voice, that could actually ruin the book.
Yeah.
So that's the only, I guess, the upside and the downside at the same time in audiobooks. If you get a good narrator, you get an extra kick. But if the narrator is just flat or actually not really doing a good job, sometimes it ruins it.
Yeah. Well, I recently read a book that I'll talk about in my monthly wrap up because I have lots of things to say, but it's called Memorial. And I tried to read the physical copy and I was really struggling, and then I tried to listen to the audiobook to see if it was a better experience. But the author and I think there's two authors actually, is so monotone. It was just like every sadness, happiness, anger, everything is like, and then he goes, I'm like, this is so boring. I can't. I'm like, I think I only had 2 hours on the audiobook left, and I couldn't listen to it. I was like, I'd rather do something else with my time. It was so boring. We may be like, oh, it's such a good audio, and then you'll listen to it, and you just won't like that voice.
You just don't like the voice, which is another possibility, right?
It just happens. Or you may not like a certain accent. Like if you rather an American accent over an English accent, that plays a role in it as well.
Right,
so,
that's true.
Yeah, your turn.
So the next book I have here, let me just put my glasses on, is The Tattooist of Auschwitz.
Oh, yeah.
By Heather Morris.
Right on.
Yeah. So this book, there's so many things about this book. The stories around the Holocaust. There's so many human, touching, heart, like really close to the heart stories from that terrible time. This one, what I really liked about this book, first the voices, they're perfect match with the characters of the whole book, the whole story. But one thing I really found perfectly done is that the whole book is a constant build-up, a constant development of the story and a build-up to the very last scene of the book. And I'm not gonna ruin it for you, but this book is one of those books that you keep reading and you know this is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it gets very emotional actually at the very end for many various reasons. But at the end, everything is so well put to that one last moment that you just cannot help yourself to be actually in their world, living what they're living. It's one of those ones you have to clap at the very end. It's like I really enjoyed that story.
I mean, it's a great book. I didn't listen to the audiobook, but it's a culmination, right? The whole book is just leading to this one final moment, and when it happens, you're like, oh, thank God. It's just like you can breathe again.
You can breathe again, exactly.
It's such a good one. Okay, wonderful. I'll go next. Okay, this is not a book for you, so don't take this recommendation. But this is for all my fellow romance lovers, okay? That is Get a Life, Chloe Brown. So this book, let me just talk about it quickly. Even though everyone on the internet that reads romances talks about it because it's that good. Like,
is that
it's
good?
just so good. Dad, close your ears, close your eyes, close everything.
Here comes
it's so steamy.
I knew it. Gonna be rated R something.
But it's so good. The narrator is so... I think just me going, oh, it's so good. It's really all you should need to give it a try. It's really well done. The story itself, obviously, it's a really, really phenomenal romance. There's so many layers. I say this all the time. I really like romances where there's much more to the characters than them just being in love. Because at the end of the day, we're complex human beings. We're more than just someone that loves another person, right? We have families and we care for other people. It's not just we care about this one human being and nothing else matters. That's not how it works. So I like when the characters are in love, yes, but they have their own lives and their own problems and their own lives outside of their romance. So they do it, like Get a Life, Chloe Brown does that beautifully. And there's 2 other books in that series. If you really love them, you have time to stay entertained. And all the audiobooks are immaculate. So that's all I'll say on that.
I'm not an expert in romantic novels by all means, so don't take anything what I'm going to say to the bank. But would you say this was an unpredictable story? Because when there were few romantic books that I've read in my life, I found them like I know exactly what the end is after 10 pages and into it.
Right.
Would you say this is different?
I think something I guess you have to look past in a romance book is that most of the time it's going to be a happy ending. That's kind of, unless it's a sad romance.
That's what I'm going to say. Yeah. Some of the best stories are actually tragedies.
Oh, right? Yeah, of course. And then they die, and then it's like, hello, let's mourn together.
Like opera. Almost all operas are like...
Oh, true, yeah. Heartbreaking,
Heartbreaking.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't say... Maybe it is a bit expected, but I think the main purpose of this novel and all of they're called like the Brown Sister trilogy. She's like a workaholic, but she deals with chronic pain. Okay. And that's like something that's not really a lot of romance books. They don't talk about that. It's like, oh, they're just in love and they're perfect and nothing's wrong with them. Okay. So this one, he's helping her accept his love and let him take care of her, and that doesn't mean she's not independent. She's allowed to get help from someone that loves her.
So there's a lot more to the just romantic side of things. No, okay, that's different.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying when I think it's important when they make romances realistic.
Then it gets richer. Yes, okay.
So that's different. That's what I really like about it. So I would recommend that one, and the audiobook is so good. It's one of those that you'll just listen and you're like, more, like what is happening?
Okay,
you know?
I like those ones.
Yeah, it's good.
I like those
but don't
ones.
read it.
I probably won't.
Okay, next, go ahead.
So the next I have here is because you have to know that I'm a sci-fi.
Oh yes.
What's that, nerd, a geek, fan, something?
Nerd, yeah.
So this is actually 3 books that you have to read all together if you want to get the whole story. One is We Are Legion. The other one is For We Are Many, and the other one is All These Worlds. And this is by Dennis E. Taylor. Just to begin with, this guy is actually a computer programmer, and I am a computer programmer too. So I found that like, okay, I like this guy just to begin with, and it's also Canadian. So I found out, okay, that's interesting, and it just so happens that his books are like completely up the charts. I just heard that we're probably gonna make a movie out of this thing, so that would be incredible. Now, what you have to like sci-fi. If you're not into sci-fi, yeah, this is not for you. But if you are into sci-fi, this is something you must read because it is so rich. This is 3 books, and this is not just one story. They're like probably, I'm going to exaggerate, but probably 10 different stories happening at the same time in different planets, in different situations, different technology, and you get a bit of everything. You get a bit of technology, you get a bit of alien worlds, you get a bit of war, politics, action. Is completely unpredictable in the book, and it's so well thread, like it's all tangled in a way that everything at the very end comes together.
I love that.
Oh, I love that because you were probably wondering in 2 books from where you are now, okay, what happened with that one situation? When are we going to come back to that? Mm-hmm. He did it perfectly. He tied every knot at the very end perfect. Every dot was connected. So I thought that was fantastic. And again, if you're into sci-fi and you just let your imagination go wild a little in these books, oh, wow, the stuff that he came up with, it's just... And not only that, he's also very factual, and I like that because some science fiction, if you don't do your homework, you can insult the intelligence of your audience very quick. And he's careful about that. He's also an engineer, so he's careful about some technical side of things, so it gives you more credibility to the whole story. The audio is perfect. The main character, his voice is exactly how I envision, or his face and all that. I would put that voice in that one character. So that's a great trilogy.
Yay. Okay. But speaking of that, we both like when very complex stories just connect seamlessly. Do you remember, I think it was in June, I had injured my neck trap region and I couldn't read. Mm-hmm. So my dad was helping me, was reading
this one was
the Celeste Ng's book. I forgot it in my last video as well. I forgot the title. And I'll put it on the screen.
Yeah.
I can't remember. But my dad was reading it out to me, and by the end he was like, you need to tell me what happens, because that's one of those books that there's so many like sub-stories. It's like story here, and then in a different time, in a different place, and then at the end it all comes together.
I remember the story now, but I can't remember the name. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
So it's very fun to read complex stories. So from what he's saying, that one is a science fiction.
But there's a lot to it.
Right. So
there's a lot to it.
Give that a go. I will someday.
You should.
Someday.
I'm not reading the steamy one.
No, that's fair. Okay, is it my turn?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Then some of my favorite audiobooks to listen to are, I guess, memoirs that are read by the author. There is something so powerful about reading a story from the person who wrote it, from the person that experienced these things.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the way that they are able to express their emotion and how deeply it impacted them is unlike anything that a side narrator could ever achieve.
Yeah, because the other one is acting.
Yeah, and this person lived it.
To live the role. The other one is actually.
So the one that I'm going to mention is Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. I do talk about this all the time, so I will make this quick. It is one of my favorite books of all time. I relate to it on a spiritual level, okay? I just think it's one of those books that was meant for me. I know many people probably feel that way, but I think it's phenomenal. She has a very soothing voice, so it almost just feels like just a warm cup of tea, or if you're a coffee drinker, a nice warm cup of coffee. Nice. Going down, and she's just going through her journey of self-growth and self-love, but she's in very rich environments. A stage in her life where she's like forgiving herself for ending her marriage. Right. She does it in Italy. So then there's that background to the story where she's in Italy. So you're simultaneously traveling with her while also growing with her. Of course. Yeah, it's phenomenal. I truly, truly love that memoir. And again, her voice is really beautiful, really soothing. And just the way that you're able to feel it in your bones, like what she's feeling, because she's able to read it. Is unlike anything
That's
else.
interesting, because I didn't read that book at all, but I watched the movie, and
which is great.
I cannot judge the book obviously, but I watched the movie.
It's really good, yeah.
And that's I would say that's a very good romantic, but it's just not a romantic story, because there's more to it.
It's like romance for yourself, romance for others,
it's
romance
more
for
like
the world, romance for
self
everything.
something related with love. I don't know, just this looking for your center or something.
Exactly,
it's a great story. I love the movie, actually.
The movie's great, yeah. So I would highly recommend that. Honestly, if there's any memoir that you're interested in, I would suggest that you look into the audiobook, because it really is such a wonderful and powerful experience to listen to a memoir from the person that wrote it.
So the next one I have is, the name is Unbroken. This is by Laura Hillebrand. You're gonna fix that, right? This book you have to just get ready, because this is going to test your nerves, your stomach. And it's going to make you feel like you want to scream once in a while you read this book. This is about a Olympic athlete. His name is Louis, and he somehow falls in like a war prisoner. And I'm not going to spoil anything here, but what you're going to live with him through his captivity, it is beyond words. In the audiobook, they nailed it with two specific characters, Louis, and I can't remember the name, but let's just call it the bad guy.
Yeah, the bad guy, yeah.
This is one of those ones that when you can hear the voice of the bad guy, you go like this, because you just, oh my God, here comes that guy. Here we go with another half an hour, or I want to run out of my car because I'm listening to this. So, but this story is so well done, and the scary part is this actually a true story. So when you're reading, it's actually somebody else's life's experience. It gets just more impactful, at least to me. And so this story it's a book that you must read. This is a combination between like his history, a personal document, somebody, a biography, but it's well done. And again, there's so much happening in the book. This is a must read or a must listen. Yeah, I would say.
Because I've only seen the movie, and I think the movie is phenomenal. And the movie, it's so difficult to watch because it's such heavy content. It's a horrifying story. So I can only imagine the potency of a book.
The book, because
right?
the book, they take their time, right?
Oh yeah, they can really
they take the time to make you feel like
torture,
you want to die.
I'm gonna definitely read that one. Now I'm gonna do a classic. Okay.
Classic.
And for that, I'm going to do The Phantom of the Opera. Yeah. I read this very recently. I think I read it last month. And it was so fun. I don't know, there's something that in certain audiobooks you feel like the narrator is having fun while they're doing it. You know what I mean? Like they're enjoying their job, like their task. So I really like when books are epistolary, like there's letters within the novel. And the opera ghost communicates with the owners of the opera house through little notes and letters. So they put that into the book. And the way that the narrator would read the notes was really comical. He had like a really like pompous and composed voice.
He was really into it.
Yeah, he was like, sincerely the opera ghost. It's just like the entire, and then the other characters that were like a bit more oblivious, they had a completely different voice.
Right.
And then, but also very like traditionally classic. You know what I mean? Like it was very, you could tell it was an old book, but not in a bad way. It's just like the language, the characters themselves. It was just really fun to...
You think he's spiced it up a little?
I think so, yeah. I think he makes it...
Adds a little of his own...
Yeah, I feel like he definitely watched the musical.
Okay.
And was like, I'm inspired by this. Right. And then he's like, okay, now I'm going to take the musical aspects of it and then put it into the book and make this little concoction. Okay. So for those reasons, I thought The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux was really, really fun.
That's great. That's a real classic.
It is, yeah.
All right. So the next one I have here is Ghost Rider. That's my last book, actually, that I'm going to mention. Ghost Rider by Neil Peart. Now, you have to know something about this. This is more than a book. This is a journal. And you have to also know what am I talking about. Neil Peart is the former drummer, the late, actually, drummer now, of the band named Rush. And Rush is a band that was formed in 1968 in Canada. And Neil Peart was also considered one of the best drummers in the world. And I've been a fan of this band since I have memory. So it really hits home to me. Now, this journal, sadly, he wrote this journal after having a major tragedy in his life. His daughter died, then his wife, and I'm saying almost back to back within the same year or something like that. And then his dog died, and then I think he just hit the wall and say, I didn't find any reason to keep going. And he had this brilliant idea to get on a long motorcycle trip. He put this trip together from Alaska all the way to, all the way down to Mexico, and from Mexico to Belize, and then and back. Really what he was trying to do is first grieving, and then the other one, I guess, just trying to find a reason to keep going. To read this journal, I don't think it's for everybody. I think you need to know who is he. If you have any formal connection to that music, to his band, or to rock in general, you probably want to read this. It's very interesting to know. What is also very nice, at least for me, it was narrated by himself, and now he's no longer here on this planet. So it's also quite cool to listen to Neil Peart, and the way he wrote the journal is as if he's talking to you at times. I really like to listen to this actually over and over. I finished one time and I actually listened to it again, because it's just like sitting with a friend and just listening to his stories about this travel, and it's just a cool thing to do with somebody who's a Rush fan.
Yeah,
I love it.
Oh, 100. If one of my favorite artists, especially if they had passed away
And put together a journal.
Then, published a book. Oh my! Every day I'd be plugged in. That's how I'd start my mornings.
Right.
Okay, and then I'm gonna do my final one.
Oh.
Okay, and this is a nonfiction. I try to give you a bit of everything, guys. So this one's called "We Are the Weather" by Jonathan Safran. I never know how to say that part. Foer. Okay, this book, Father, add it to your list, please. Everyone watching, add it to your list. It is okay. Let me preface this. It is a book about why the world is in such a bad condition, but it is hopeful.
There's hope.
Yeah, it doesn't leave you feeling like, okay, why did I read this if I'm gonna die tomorrow? So I do, give you that little heads up. It is a heavy read, because it's not an easy topic to just having to almost come to terms with where you could be doing better or where it's out of your control,
right,
kind of situation. But the way this man writes, he does write fiction stories. He's an expert at his craft. He knows what he's doing. So he brings that talent into nonfiction, which is very refreshing to read. A book that's, dense with information and facts, not too dense that it's like, oh, I need to, this is like studying. It's very digestible because he has a very seamless way with words. So you're just like,
okay.
Oh, I'm done the book now, and you don't even realize. And also what I say to most people when I suggest this book is that a lot of people, especially when it comes to discussing what you eat, I understand that is a very personal thing. Everyone is very attached to their food. I understand that completely, especially like
cookies.
stop, but especially for us, like we're from Mexico and we live in Canada, so a huge part of how we still connect with our culture is through food. So I totally understand how it's a tricky situation to maneuver your nutrition and what you eat without almost feeling defensive about it. But the way he handles it is brilliant, because he's so open with you from the beginning. He's like, I've been trying to eat a relatively plant-based diet for years, but there are moments that I fail and I secretly eat a burger.
Right. Some cravings once in a while.
So he is super honest about the difficulty of that, and how for some people it's nearly impossible, but it's just finding a balance and trying to do a small act here, a small act there, and just doing your part. So you're learning alongside with him. It's not like he's reprimanding you or lecturing you. He's like, hey, this is what I'm going through, and you can probably relate, and we can hopefully do something together.
Right.
Brilliant. And that is one that I'll go in and out of like all the time. Even though I've read it, I'll still listen to bits and pieces, because I think it's really motivating and inspiring. And
so what's the final message? Is it motivating you or encouraging to change your habits?
To change your habits, and
food.
In food specifically, but not in like a permanent be vegan or die. It's like, hey, you could try eat vegan for breakfast.
Oh, okay. So take it easy.
Yeah. Okay. We're not saying you, because that's why it's called...
I can do that.
Yeah, it's called We Are the Weather, Saving the World Starts at Breakfast.
Okay.
So that's kind of like the saying. He's like, you don't have to become this all-encompassing vegan and never...
Starting tomorrow, I'm vegan.
Exactly. It's like, no, have your crazy dinner with whatever you normally do, but like...
Have a vegan breakfast.
Okay. So,
Baby steps. Baby steps.
Exactly. It's so good, and I highly, highly, highly recommend that nonfiction. It's phenomenal.
Well, we'll do it.
Okay, lovely. Well, that's everything, guys. I hope this was enjoyable. We are both very nervous. Him because he's never been in a YouTube video, and me, because no one watches me film my YouTube videos. So we did it though.
We did it.
We did. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you as always so much for sharing your time with me. I really, really appreciate it. And I will see you when I see you.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you. Bye.